like Kirby. I also like it when people subscribe and help me get to my year-end goal of 600 subs. Ha! 3 words and then I start talking about subscribing and stuff. That's gotta be a new record. We're over 20 games into this whole Kirby month thing, so I'd hope we all know that by now, but I just wanted to preface that, because most franchises have some pretty bad first games, but Kirby's not about that. Kirby's first game holds up outstandingly well and was really close to placing in the top 10. Yeah, hard to believe that we're almost at the top 10, huh? Gurgish Dreamland isn't a game I hear the vast majority talk about in this positive of a light. I don't hear many people say that they dislike this game per se, but number 12 is really high up. For a game that doesn't even have copy abilities, that can't be right. Right? I find myself coming back to play this game all the time. There are plenty of reasons that I do, but let's start with the negatives first and then work our way up from there. Kirby's Dreamland is short. Very short. It clocks in at 4 levels. A boss rush, and then the final fight with Dedede. The normal mode can be cleared in under a half hour, even on a blind playthrough. Even those who aren't very good at video games can definitely get this finished in under an hour. Of course, the extra mode exists and should always be taken into consideration when talking about the game's length. But that said, it only adds between a half hour and 2 hours on average. I can't say that these are objective, factual numbers, but from what I've observed over the years, on top of what I've done over the years, I'd say that's fairly accurate. This game also predates the copy ability. Adventure introduced them, so what you're left with here is a Kirby that can't copy. He also can't run or do that crouching slide kick thing. He doesn't even swim. He just kinda walks underwater. Anyway, Kirby's move pool feels very limited in comparison to later games because of this. He can walk, jump, crouch, and float. That's all he's got. While I wouldn't want this to be all he has ever again, I'm totally fine with these being Kirby's only options. The game was built around this idea, and since it predates copy abilities, it doesn't feel like they were haphazardly removed. The levels in this game are a lot of fun to play, each built with a different theme in mind. And I'm not just talking about the visuals either, although that is true. I'm talking gameplay here. Green Greens is your starter level. Castle Lololo is a maze level. Float Islands has a lot of aerial movement. Bubbly Clouds has a lot of precision-based movement. And Castle Dedede, as I already said, is the boss rush. That's not all these levels are, of course, and elements of others are mixed in for good measure, but what I'm saying is that every level stands out. That's easy to do when there's only 4 or 5 of them, but with the level total being so small, it allows for a lot more fine-tuning. They're very polished, of course, and they're also very easy, but the lower difficulty makes this a great game to play to just relax. Yes, even I like to cool down and play something and not worry about the difficulty every once in a while. In the same token, people who followed my channel for a while know that I love to play games that can either be very easy or very hard, depending on how you play them. I love doing this because it gives me the best of both worlds. I can either relax, or I can challenge myself, improve, get better. And while the normal mode in this game is fun, the extra mode is where this game truly shines. The level layout is the exact same as the normal mode, but that's where the similarities end. Enemies move faster, they hit harder, and in some cases, they're just outright replaced with more threatening enemies. Mini-bosses either have totally different patterns, or just go on the offensive way faster. Boss bosses have harder to avoid attacks, and in general move at much faster speeds. Nothing has changed about Kirby, of course, so going through the levels here gives off an entirely different feel. Clearing levels in the extra mode makes me feel satisfied. No matter how many times I play this game, I always feel like I overcame a major obstacle whenever I clear them, with possible exception to Green Greens. I think on your first playthrough, it's the hardest level in the game, actually, but once the initial wow factor of the extra mode goes away, Green Greens actually gets a lot easier. Funny enough, I think the exception to this is Wispy Woods. If you're not careful, he can kill you really quickly. He drops Gordos alongside apples in this game, and in Dreamland 1, Gordos deal 3 points of damage. Since Kirby has 6 health, you get hit by 2 of them, you lose a life. The extra mode levels are designed to punish those who think they can just breeze through the game like they could in normal mode, and I really love that. I hear a lot that Kirby games are all so easy, all that jazz, and in the best games, there are ways to increase the difficulty. But what's nice about Dreamland is that if you know the extra mode code, you don't even have to bother going through the normal mode. The extra mode, it's actually unlocked from the very start, so long as you know the code. Given the size of the levels, Kirby's movement here feels great. He might not have the dash, but his walk speed is fast enough to suffice. Unlike, say, Dreamland 2, where it slowed the game down. One thing I love about moving Kirby in this game is that when you release the puff of air to end your float, or just exhaling. I wrote that last sentence in the script. I don't really know why. Kirby's horizontal movement speed drastically increases. Because of this, exhaling can be much more of an offensive or defensive attack than it normally is, seeing as how it doesn't kill Kirby's momentum. For both difficulty modes, the feeling that they're going for is largely enhanced by this game's presentation. Visually speaking, it's for entirely different reasons. For normal mode, it's what you'd expect. The game is relaxing, fun, and charming, and having these very pleasant visuals makes it feel a lot more soothing. It also makes the contrast with the creepier stuff, such as the Scarfies, stand out a lot more. This is the case for all Kirby games, but with this one being the most approachable of the bunch, I'd argue it's more important for this game to get it right than any other Kirby game. And largely, I think it succeeds. For the extra mode, the strengths are all the same, but the outcome is completely different. Now, instead of feeling relaxed, you feel like you're being lulled into that false sense of security. The cute-looking environments and simplistic design approach now give off a stark contrast to the insane difficulty spike from normal to extra. Enemies in many cases are also much less cute. I won't say that they're scary or anything, but when one of them suddenly flies on screen out of nowhere when you've only got 1 HP left, you'll panic like you're playing a horror game. The music in this game is also simply delightful. Almost every track in this game is iconic to the franchise, and even the few that aren't pop up every now and then. It's a high-energy soundtrack, and while I'm normally not the biggest fan of 8-bit music, the music in this game is just so nice that I can't help but love it. Hearing Green Greens in this game, and then hearing it in all of the other Kirby games, it almost sounds calming in a way. It's weird, but it's really nice. Of course, another big perk for this game is that it was the very first in the franchise. A lot of first games I don't find myself enjoying very much, mostly just for the limitations compared to later entries. The other big gaming franchise I'm really into, Fire Emblem, I don't like the first game very much. I like the remake, but the original? No, it's one of my least favorites. What's different about Kirby's Dreamland is that it isn't just a bunch of good ideas mixed in with, say, hardware limitations. Ideas that would be ironed out and expanded later with some downright bad decisions that would just never come back. Everything executionally works in Kirby's Dreamland, not just on paper. And that's why I think it holds up as a great first game. Now, I've gone the entire video without bringing up this last point, but with everything I've said above, this game would still only amount to top 20. Maybe. I love a lot about it, but the hard reality is that it's still very short. I gave Blowout Blast a lot of flack for this. I gave Drum Dash Deluxe a lot of flack for this. What makes me love Kirby's Dreamland as much as I do, those that follow the channel, you're not going to be surprised here, is how fun this game is to speedrun. Fun little fact here, but Kirby's Dreamland is actually one of the most popular games of all time to speedrun. Yeah, not just in the franchise, although it reaches number 1 in that regard really easily. On speedrun.com alone, there are well over 400 submitted speedruns. And for normal mode by itself, there are almost 350. The number 2 game for Kirby, Superstar Ultra, has just over half of the amount of overall runners as Dreamland has. And I don't think I need to explain why so many people love speedrunning this game. Because it's so short, because it's so accessible, because it's so easy to play, and because it's just so well made, it combines together to make one of the easiest games to speedrun of all time. I will always argue that anyone can speedrun. World records aren't everything. Honestly, pushing yourself to get a personal best is what it's all about. But actually finding a first game to speedrun is pretty hard. And I can't recommend any better game to get started with, of course, than Dreamland. I love speedrunning Kirby games that have copy abilities, but seeing a Kirby game not being completely cheesed by them is also pretty refreshing. I'll take a Kirby game with copy abilities if we aren't talking about speedrunning, except for Dreamland, of course, but normal Kirby speedruns have always fascinated me, and I love being able to do that in this game. To wrap this all up, Kirby's Dreamland is a great time regardless of how you want to play it. It isn't for everyone, especially those who aren't too into short games, but for anyone who loves to dive deep into them and explore the deepest depths of how it works, this game is a gold mine. The extra mode is insane, and even though I've played it enough times to be able to clear it without dying at all, it just doesn't get old. The game itself doesn't get old. I love it.